Hello, my name is Kevin Snyder, here for Tuts Plus. Let's take a look at the preview of what we're going to make today. Okay, so using Cinema 4D, let's jump in here, let me hit pause here. Using Cinema 4D, we are going to create these splines. Really, they're just really long flat cubes, and we're going to deform them with a bend deformer, and we're going to duplicate them using the Mograph cloner object, and then we are going to get a bitmap image to stick to the top of these clones. Now, if you've ever worked with textures spanning across multiple clones, it can be a little bit of a workaround to get them to stick. And so I came up with this workaround for getting them to stick to these curved surfaces. And so I want to share it with you. I think it's a powerful technique, and you can apply it to all sorts of different situations when you're dealing with texturing and clones in Cinema 4D. Okay, here in Cinema 4D, let's dive right in and take a look at this project. Control D will bring up my project settings, and we're working at 24 frames per second. For the render settings, I'm working at 1280 by 720, and I'm working at 24 frames per second here as well, and I'm going to render 72 frames. Let's start off by adding a cube. And let's go ahead and change the dimensions of our cube. On the X, I'm going to make it 1500. On the Y, 5. On the Z, 50. So we just have basically a plane with a little bit of height to it. For the segments, we're going to change the X value to 100. And then the Y and the Z, we'll leave at just 1. Now, the more segments we have, the more smooth our bend will appear. Okay, so we may turn that up a little bit later, but for now we'll just leave it at 100. Let's go ahead and add a bend deformer to our scene. Now, when I first started with Cinema 4D, I had a little bit of a tough time with the bend deformer because sometimes you don't get the results that you're hoping for. Let me just make the bend deformer a child of the cube, and let me zoom out just a little bit. If we increase the strength, this is not what we want to happen at all, because we want this surface of the plane to be bent along this spline that we see right here on the guide. So in order to do that, we just need to rotate our bend deformer. So let's go up here. We're going to rotate this 90 degrees. Hold down Shift to snap at 10-degree increments. And now, if we increase the bend, now we're getting the results that we want. Okay, so let's just change the size of the bend deformer to match the size of our cube. So we're going to go 5, 1500, and 50. So now we have our bend deformer the size of our cube, and it's bending along the entire length of the cube. Let's go ahead and keyframe our bend deformer. So we want to start it off the screen, and then we want it to come on. So to start, let's go ahead and crank this up. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to hold down Control and click to set a keyframe. I'm going to come out here to 48, and I'm going to change that to 0. And Control and click. So this spline, this cube, is going to start off the screen and then fold on. Okay, next thing we need to do is create a plane out of this one cube. So we're going to do that using Mograph. So with the cube selected, I go to Mograph, hold down Alt and select Cloner. And on the y-axis, let's go ahead and change that to 0. And we actually want to displace them along the z-axis here. So let's change this to 50, because that is the width of our cube. And let's increase the count here. I'll just choose 20. And so now if we scrub through here, we have a plane of cubes, okay, moving together. Now we want to offset these cubes coming on to give it a little bit more organic look, something kind of more interesting. So with the cloner selected, let's go to Mograph, Effector, and we are going to choose Step. Now by default, if we go to Parameter, the scale is selected. We don't want to change the scale. Okay, we do want to offset time though. So if we increase this, let's maybe start with, let's go down to 15. And if we scrub through here, now we have these cubes coming on with a little bit of delay between each one, and we get a really nice look going on here. Okay, if you don't like the pattern of how these are coming on, we can come over here to the Effector, and you can change this graph here. So we can maybe just reverse this. Okay, just like that. Let me undo that. Let's see. Okay. You could also, if I control and click, we can add a point in the center. Okay, to get a little bit different look. So it's totally up to you. You can play with this spline and really customize the look of this. So I'm going to just Control Z to set it back to our original look here. Okay. So next I'm going to select everything here. I'm going to hit Alt G, and I'm going to name this, hit enter. I'm going to name this right top, because we're going to make a couple different layers of splines coming in here. I'm calling them splines, but really they're just cubes that are being bent. But either way. Okay, let's go ahead and duplicate this. So I'm going to hold down Control and drag down, and I'm going to rename this so we have right bottom, and we'll go into the coordinates, and we're just going to offset this. We're going to go down, maybe negative. Let's go -5. We'll go -6. Okay, the height of our cube is 5, so this will give us just a little bit of space right in between these two planes going on. Now if we scrub through here, it doesn't look a whole lot different. It just looks like the cubes are thicker because the timing is the same. So on the right bottom here, we're actually going to go into the bend, and I want the bend to happen a little bit faster for the clones on the bottom. So I'm going to just slide it to the left a couple of frames. And now when I come through here, and let's go a little bit more. So that's at 45, so just 3 frames different. Okay, we get this staggered look. And so obviously we could add another layer if we wanted, and you could really make this as multi-layered as you wanted to. Okay, very good. So now I'm going to select both of these and press Alt G again. And this time I'm just going to call this the right. And let's go ahead and move it over to the right, just so that this seam here, the edge of our object here, is in the center. So I'm going to hold down Shift so that it snaps it 10-degree increments, 750 because the entire width is 1500. Okay, let's just double check. Okay, it's looking good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the left side. So now I can just drag the right, hold down Control and drag down. And we're just going to name this left. And we actually need to come in here and name these appropriately. Okay, so now on the left, we need to actually rotate this, right? So we're going to rotate it around 180 degrees. Come on. Okay, we're going to slide it over, and we want to go 1500, and then we're going to move it up so that these things line up. And let's just double check this. Okay, looks good. Okay, so now if we scrub through here, here's the base of our look here. We have the two sides come together and offset. Remember, play with those splines to get, you could have the two sides come in completely different if you want. It's totally up to you, but I like this mirrored look that we have going on. Okay, let's go ahead and set up a camera. And I'm going to get something kind of close here. We want this overhead view. And actually I'm going to delete that camera. So what I like to do usually is kind of get something fairly close to where I want to be. Now add a camera so that the view is fairly similar. For the angle here, we're going to do a -90, so it's looking directly down, and then we're going to change this one to 0. And we just want to make sure that we are close enough along the y-axis so that we get the entire plane in the frame. So right now I have this frame right there. This is going to be our entire image. So we just want to make sure that we have it centered in here and it's taking up the entire frame. So let's just kind of eyeball this. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and texture this, okay, because we need some textures being applied to this. You'll see on the next step when we go ahead and we're going to bake this animation in, and having textures pre-applied kind of helps us out a little bit. So let's reveal the right top and right bottom and left top and left bottom. So I come down here and double click, and we can make these any color right now. Let me bring this down a little bit. So just do a red. And let's do one that's yellow maybe. And we can just name this, let's actually just name this bottom. And let's name this one top. So we're going to apply the red to both the tops. We're going to apply the bottom to both the bottoms. So if we scrub through here, red and yellow. Nothing too exciting yet. Okay, one more time we're going to select both the right and the left. Alt G, and I'm just going to name this main as our main animation. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to bake this animation into a point level animation. So we'll have one object that has all of our animation in it. Okay, so unfortunately, if you have to make changes to your cloners or any of the settings from the start to this point, you'll have to go back and make your adjustments and then do the second half of this tutorial over again, which isn't a really big deal. The second half of the tutorial will go fairly quick. Once you get this workflow down, it's not too bad, but it is a destructive step here. So under my plugins, I have this plugin called PLA Mate. And it's going to do just like I said, we're going to bake it down into a point level animation. So we have keep textures checked because it's going to make selection tags for these two textures for us. And we don't really have to do anything else. We just click OK and let it do its work. Okay, so it's a fast little plugin. It turns off our object that we ran it on, and now we have this point level animation applied to this object. We scrub through here, we have the same animation, we have our textures being applied, and it made texture selections for each of our materials. So we have polygon selection 0, and if we take a look, that's for the top. And then we have the bottom, we have poly selection number 1, which is this one here. Okay, so that makes it nice for retexturizing this later with different colors. We already have the selection tags, we don't have to go in there and make those. We do, however, need one more selection tag so that we can apply our bitmap image to the top of this. So let's do this. Let's apply a protection tag to the camera, and I'm going to turn this camera off. Okay, I'm going to hit F5. I want to get in here and see the top of our main PLA here. And let's go ahead and select all the polygons on top. And I'm going to come out here to where it's flat. Let's increase the size, and we actually have to go into polygon mode. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure we have our main PLA selected. We'll go to select, set selection, and I'm going to name this texture overlay. Okay, so now we have our polygon selected that we want our bitmap image to be applied to. So I'm going to hit F1, and let's go back to our camera view. And let's go ahead and create a new texture with our bitmap to place on here. So double click. I'm going to name this texture overlay. Let's go ahead and bring in our bitmap. And let's use this one. So we have wallpaper. Say no. Okay. Let's go ahead and apply it to our main PLA. And we are going to make some adjustments here. First off, we want the selection to be our texture overlay. So it's only on the very top of our object, and we'll be able to see the red and yellow underneath it. We want the projection to be flat. I do not want to tile it. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Now, we want to go ahead and adjust this a little bit. So we want to go into the texture mode. And I notice it's kind of difficult to see what's going on sometimes because we're seeing the selection here of our main PLA, but it has to be selected. So if we press Control V on select wireframe, we go ahead and uncheck that, and it just makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on in here. Now we need to rotate this texture, and so we can grab it, and we actually need to rotate it -90 degrees. Okay, so we can see our image, and it's very small, but it is going the right way for us. You might have to rotate it a different direction depending on your image, but typically that 90 degrees works out. Now, we want to move this up into this corner and then scale it to fill our screen here. And in earlier versions, I'm in R15, in earlier versions you could just go ahead and grab this and move it, and it works pretty well. The behavior is a little bit different in R15. In order for it to respond like it does in previous versions, we want to select the Enable Access modification. And with that selected, we can just move it into position. So if you're in an earlier version, you do not need to do that. Okay, it's just here in R15. So we're just going to eyeball it, get it in the corner here. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Now on the scale on the length U, let's go ahead and really crank that up to fill the width. Okay, So it's wide enough. Now on the length V, we could eyeball it as well. Okay, now I know my comp is 1280 by 720, and this picture has the same aspect ratio because I edit it to be that way. So I could just eyeball this and like that and call it good. Okay, but if I don't want to eyeball it, I can also do it mathematically. So let me show you. Let me just back this up. So I know that 1280 divided by 720 is 1.777, and it just continues on with the sevens. So I can use some basic math in these dialog boxes to help me out. So if I take the length U, I'm going to copy it, paste it over here, and I could have just typed it in, I guess. So 882 divided by 1.777, and hit enter, and we're already scaled, ready to go. Okay, so it works out really nice that you can do basic math in these dialog boxes. Kind of saves a little bit of thinking sometimes on those late nights. So now if we scrub through here, it appears that we have it set up, ready to go. And so the first time I did this, I was very excited that, you know, I got this bitmap texture sticking to cloned cubes in here, but under closer inspection I could see that it was not working. If we take a look at the texture right here at the end of these cubes, the texture stayed in place, but these cubes are moving through it, so it's not actually sticking to it. So let's take a look at how do we actually make it stick to it. So this UVW tag, we're going to delete it. I'm going to select our texture overlay tag, and we're going to right click it and choose generate UVW coordinates. And now let's go into object mode, and now when we scrub through here, the texture is sticking to our cubes. Okay, so pretty cool little workflow here. It gives you a lot of power to be able to take a bitmap and map it onto multiple clones across, you know, several objects. So unfortunately it is, you know, destructive here, but I think the end result is worth it. And as you can see, getting the texture on here and everything's not too bad. So if I just had to back up to the step before we had our main PLA, it's not too bad of a workflow. So it works out really nice that we have these two other textures here. We can come in and obviously change those textures to be any color we want, and it makes it pretty flexible for reusing this. And if we come out here, this is a little bit bright. Let's maybe just throw a little bit of lighting on this real quick just to make it look better. I'm using the Grayscale Gorilla lighting kit. Let's just go with the overhead softbox. And I'll just do something really quick here just to make it look a little bit better. And let's see. I do not want to see it in those places. A little bit brighter. So actually, let's go ahead and maybe on this one, I might just use a little global illumination on it. And so as we can see, our shadows are very grainy, so I'd want to crank up the shadow quality on this. I don't want to go too high so it stays kind of fast for this. But another setting I really like is adding ambient occlusion to it, so it really brings out the detail between these cubes. And I'm going to go ahead and add global illumination just real quick. I'm not going to tweak the settings too much. I'm just going to do low, try and keep this still kind of running fast. And obviously when it comes to lighting and texturing, the sky's the limit Okay, I'm liking the look here. Looks pretty good. So there you have it, taking your cloned object, and this will work whether the clones are being bent or distorted, anything that you're doing to your clones, we can go ahead and bake those down into a point level animation. And once we do that, we can get those bitmap images to stick to our clones. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. As always, if you create something cool with this technique, shoot me a link. I'd love to see it. Thanks for watching.